we are here with Latia Lee, who is an amazing endometriosis advocate who has gone on such a journey with endo and infertility and has been open with her social media community, also with us here at Endofound. And thank you and congratulations on your pregnancy.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
We're so excited for you. So what some people might not know that are watching is that infertility and endometriosis are commonly linked. And infertility is endometriosis is one of the leading causes of infertility. I was diagnosed with infertility while I was having acute pain, and a specialist found a mass in my uterus, and it was her idea to do an anti-Müllerian hormone test. And she was like, hey, I have a suspicion if your egg reserve is low, you might have endometriosis. But of course, we don't know that until you go in for a surgery and they excise some tissue and do a biopsy. But let's take it step by step. And an AMH test is really simple. It's a blood test, and it tells you how many eggs you potentially have left. So I was 32, about to turn 33, and I was told I had the egg reserve of someone who was like postmenopausal, 0.07. It was looking really, really, really dark for me in terms of the ability to ever have a child. It was the hardest part was that diagnosis. The endometriosis, I was at that point like, give me all the pain if I can have my own child, because that was a want for me. And I know for you, you have gone through 3 years of trying to get pregnant. Can you tell us how your journey started and what you kind of learned throughout that process?
So yeah, it started in July of 2019. I remember at the age of 39. I am single. I was still single, was single then, and I know the clock was ticking, and I decided to take on the journey to be a single mom by choice. So like you, I had, the testing, and, my AMH was 0.28, so it's far behind you. And then actually what I had decided was to start with just IUI. I had my first one actually ended up in an early miscarriage, and then I had 3 failed IUIs. And then the next step was to proceed on to IVF. But I took a little bit of a different route just because my AMH was so low and my FSH was so high that, discussing with my fertility doctor, the probability of me actually having a successful round of getting embryos, healthy embryos at the age of 40 now, I'm 40 now. I decided to go either the donor egg or the donor embryo route. Actually, that's what I did. Little did I know there are not a lot of donated African-American embryos. That's a whole other
Wow.
other issue. Yes, so I ended up having to create my own embryos. So they're actually double donor, because I use a donor egg and a donor sperm. And I went that route. And I had 3 transfers, and one failed, and then 2 chemicals. And I knew it wasn't the A quality because my donor was 24 years old. I had top sperm because it was premium sperm. And I just felt that it was something immune, because what they were implanting, but they weren't implanting fully. And I just, sometimes you have it in your gut, like just something is not right. Unfortunately, the clinic that I went to didn't really do immune testing, weren't really supportive of it. So sometimes when you don't seek the answers, you have to be brave enough to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I literally got my file, found another clinic that was immune friendly, sought a reproductive immunologist, had some testing done, and realized I indeed had a lot of autoimmune issues, which my body was pretty much attacking my embryos. But like I said, it took over 2 years to get to that point. And I had to start all over, find new donors. And then we developed a protocol for me. My first transfer ended up in a chemical again, so it wasn't that straightforward. In July of 2022. And we went back, we did some testing, we tweaked the protocol, and then my transfer in October was successful. So it took a while. I mean, now like my due date is July of 2023. So, and I started in July of 2019. So literally from start to finish is 4 years to be able to bring this baby earthside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And I mean that you and I were talking, off camera about just how children choose you, and it doesn't matter how, when that they find you, whether it's adoption, whether it's IVF, whether it's natural. I just really do believe that there's a bigger plan out there than we even know here. And like you said, bringing this baby earthside, and I'm just so excited for you to embark on motherhood and all that you've already done to become a mom. What I think is interesting too is like when you go to an IVF doctor, and I have friends right now who are trying to get pregnant and they're hitting things like unexplained infertility. And that always gives me a red flag, because I learned early on, I had an excellent reproductive immunologist in Dr. Braverman, who has since passed away, and Dr. Vidali, and they understood endometriosis at its like stem cell. So they would always say, you can't just do a cookie cutter with an endometriosis patient IVF protocol, because everybody's different and they have different immunology. That's a hard word. Immunological underlying issues. So from the beginning for me, I had doctors who understood that and who were making sure I had a tailored medicinal protocol for my IVF. So I was fortunate in that way. And fortunately for you, you finally got there. But for people out there that are like, I was diagnosed with infertility, or I'm trying to go the IVF route for other reasons, and they're not sure where to go. It's like, always beware when they just want to give you the same medicine that they're giving the person sitting next to you in the waiting room. And that they're not doing the proper testing, because it could result in a lot of time lost, a lot of resources, especially
money, a lot of
money. Oh my gosh. And I want to get into the money too, but also in terms of like, you only have so many eggs, right? And once you're out, you're out. There's only so many that you can save. There's only so many that have the equality, even if you get them retrieved, that are viable. Then you have to make your embryos. Like there's just such a process, and all of that, every step along the way is like, fingers crossed, I hope it works out. But yes, the money of, I know more and more corporations are covering IVF a couple rounds. For me, my company did not cover anything on IVF, and the medicine prices were insanity. You and I were just talking about that.
Yes, it's so true. Yes, like I said, like you hit it, like I hate the unexplained infertility. There's no such thing about that, and which is why I want to educate women who are going through infertility that there are answers, that you just have to seek the right people. And in making making that change to a different clinic was the best thing I could have done. I literally had about 5 months worth of testing before we found out things I needed and before we tweaked that protocol. And I was with my first clinic for 2 years. I was with the second clinic for less than a year before I graduated. So it just shows you, if you have the right people, if you seek that right information, that you will find the answers. There's no such thing as unexplained infertility. You'll find your answers, and your protocol will be tweaked specifically for you. And then you're most likely will be successful. So I just want to let women know that.
No, I think you have done such a tremendous job in taking your knowledge that you've gained throughout the course of your endo diagnosis and infertility diagnosis, and your whole story with that you've done such an exceptional job of carrying that torch forward. Because sadly, we've made such strides, I think, in society about talking about these topics. But there's still difficult topics to talk about. At this point, I'm just always like, yeah, did IVF, blah, blah, blah. It's like, so I've talked about it so much that it doesn't feel unique anymore. But then somebody will react to it as if they've never heard about it before, and think that it's different or unusual or not traditional. And I think all that kind of has to go out the wayside, because no one can predict their future or what could happen to their bodies that make it the only choice possible.
Mhm.
But I do think that the more we talk about infertility and the more we kind of destigmatize that there's nothing wrong with looking towards other methods of trying to build a family, the better off we all are mentally, spiritually, and otherwise.
Mhm. It's like we have endometriosis, right?
Right.
And it's like, then pretty much the second issue there is infertility. Like I have specifically a infertility Instagram, and I follow a lot of other women who are trying to conceive. And literally, I have to say about 80% of the people that I follow, they have endometriosis. Like most of us are, women who are struggling with endometriosis as well. I mean, 40% of women with endo have infertility issues. So, I mean, that's huge.
Huge.
That's
And I think the other thing that maybe I give unsolicited advice now. I turned 40, so now I feel like it's like I can't. But when people tell me that they were just diagnosed with endo, whether they're like 23 or 43, the first thing I say is, did you freeze your eggs?
I say that now too. I say that because of me. Had I known,
Mhm.
I might not have had to use a donor, a donor egg. So I do tell like my friends who are under the age of 30 who are still single, have you thought about preserving your fertility? And I think especially in the African American community, like
Mhm.
infertility in general is not talked about,
Right.
right? We just don't talk about it. So, I'm in a couple of Facebook groups. I have a wonderful group of ladies, and we share our experiences, and our goal is to, let other women know that you're not alone. Infertility is hard. Like endometriosis is hard. Fertility and endometriosis is really hard. And sometimes it's like, can we get a break? We already have
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
And also the other thing too, with all the infertility treatments, is it's a recipe for flaring the endo. And so it's like, yeah. I mean, I had my worst, I say case, I guess, of endo 7 months postpartum with my son. And I was kind of told, that it probably would never come back as bad or whatever. And I almost went into kidney failure that time. So and part of the reason some doctors thought was because I was on so many fertility drugs, which is just like a match to the flame of endo.
it is. And I mean, I think I
So,
wasn't even on a full meds, but I was on a medicated medication for those medicated IUIs.
mhm.
And it actually flared my endo so badly that I needed another surgery in December of 2020.
See, that's the sucky part.
I
It's
needed
like
another.
it's that, and I don't think I've ever actually brought up that correlation before with anyone, because,
Mhm,
and it's interesting, you and I both had similar things happen,
mhm.
due to,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, usually it's all about suppressing the estrogen, and then on the other side we're like, no, bring it up, bring it up, bring it down, bring it
yeah,
down, bring it up, bring it down.
I
It's
know. And I was even afraid with my transfers because when I changed clinics, my new doctor prefers medicated transfers, where my previous one, it was modified. So I had no estrogen and I went to
oh,
estrogen, which was very interesting. But then we agreed. I was like, listen, this is too much estrogen for me. We got to lower it down. So we kind of, my second transfer, we were able to titrate it down. And I actually did okay. I've been doing okay, I have to say, with this pregnancy.
mhm,
Some women you flare with pregnancy, or some women, I heard, you go into remission. You don't know which way it's going to be.
mhm.
But actually I have to say I've been
Feeling good.
okay. Like this, I really can't complain. Like this has been a pretty good pregnancy for me. So
God. Yeah,
really
I
good
mean,
about
it's
that.
I also think with going back to the egg freezing, it's just a good investment.
Yes,
It's like if you're just not sure, even if you're sure, I just feel like always have those eggs on reserve, because you're
I
never going to
agree.
regret that. It's a better investment, I think, than buying like a fancy handbag or whatever. It's like, go take your, save up like a couple $1,000 and just do what you got to do to get those eggs frozen,
And you don't
because
have that pressure. If you
you
don't
don't
want to get
have
married
it.
right away, if you want to get married when you're 40 or 45, hey, you have 30-year-old eggs.
That's,
It's so
yeah.
different. It's
I
so
think it
different.
gives so much freedom. And like you said, it alleviates the stress, and you kind of know, and you never have to feel like you've got to rush into, let's say, a relationship where otherwise you wouldn't, because you just want to have that check mark of I want a baby, but you don't actually want the man attached to it, because that's a whole other kind of headache,
Yes.
you know, or whomever else attached to it. So, yeah, I think ultimately, so much of endometriosis and the diagnosis that comes with it, whether that is a comorbid diagnosis of infertility or what have you, we always talk about like advocate for yourself. And sometimes I get angry at that, because I'm like, oh God, like you hand somebody all this stuff, and then on top of it, you want them to be this fierce warrior all the time. While they're in 10 plus pain, while they're heartbroken over certain diagnoses. It's a lot. So as much as I like do not like saying advocate for yourself, there's really no choice. There's really no choice, because nobody loves you or fights for you like you will, because you know your body, you know what you want for your future. Nobody else does, and no one's gonna be more committed to it than you.
I agree. And that's what I had to do. I had to like educate myself about this immunology. I had to find doctors. You know, there's only 6 immunologists in the country to go to. That's it, 6. Even when I was like tweaking my protocol, we were having all these different testing. I was reading journal articles. I was sending my fertility doctor articles. I was discussing protocols with him. And what I really liked about him was he says that you're really intelligent and I want to hear what you have to say. And he also says it's not just because of me that you're pregnant, it's because of you, because you did the work and you researched and you educated yourself. So it's important. Like, we can't always just accept the answers that the doctors are giving us. Even when it comes to endometriosis, like we've always been taught to educate ourselves and to power ourselves and to advocate for ourselves. It's kind of the same thing with infertility. We got to kind of educate ourselves and learn our bodies and things that we think will work, and not be afraid to make that change, make that move. You know, if your clinic is not helping you, it's time to move on. Like this was, I had success with my 3rd clinic. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes you have to make the change.
Yeah, and you're living successful proof of that. And again, it goes back to, if you have endometriosis and infertility, there's no such thing as unexplained infertility. And there's no such thing as a one size fits all IVF protocol. And if they say that, I would leave before you put the money down.
I would too, yes. You're not going to take the time to, you know, and I appreciate my new doctor, because I'd be like, oh my God, I have to do more testing. Can I just transfer? He'd be like,
or,
oh,
you know,
sure.
Or the other thing that I've learned, if anyone says to you, even a new gynecologist, right? Like a general practicing gynecologist, they say to you, I don't really, I mean, I know a little bit about endometriosis, be like, peace.
Run.
You cannot
Run.
You cannot go. It's just like, because what I found is they'll blame everything on endo and they don't know what they're talking about, or they're just like, I can't help you because I don't know anything about endo. So you're like, well, why am I here in the first place?
Yes, it's true. It's so true.
Well,
but still, you know, if I have any issues, I just call my endo specialist and literally just go to the, my GYN for my yearly pap smear, and that's it. Because she's just like, I do take care of endo, but you're too complex. You see your specialist, right? And I'm like, yes. And I also appreciate that she says I'm too complex for her to care, regarding my endo.
Right. Because there's some doctors who wouldn't want to admit that. So the fact that there is that admission is a good thing. Well, I'm excited for everything coming up for you. I think what you're doing is, I'm a solo parent myself, and it's, there's nothing more rewarding than seeing life through your child's eyes. So I'm just excited to continue to watch your path to become a mom.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.